Here we're going to look at the components of fitness. We mentioned these in the last show. So by the end of this lesson you should be able to describe and name the components of physical fitness, the physiological effects of each of exercise on the components of fitness, describe how to apply the principles of overload, reversibility and specificity to progress and regress your components of fitness. So lots of long words there, but we'll go into that. We'll also recognise the factors affecting physical fitness. So firstly, have a think about these terms. Have you ever thought about what exercise is and what physical fitness is and what activity is? It's worth just having a think about those terms, write down some keywords before you move on. So here's some definitions for you. Exercise is a structured or planned activity that requires physical effort with the aim of sustaining or improving physical fitness. There's a definition there. As opposed to activity, so activity is any bodily movement which uses energy. So the point is, where an exercise program is a structured and planned activity with a clear goal. If we look at the components of physical fitness now, you might remember not everyone is the same, not everyone's fit in the same way, and we break these down into two topics: health related and skill related. So health related fitness has five components: cardiovascular, muscular endurance, muscular strength, flexibility and body composition. So those are all elements of health related fitness. I'm going to go through those individually now. So if we look at cardiovascular fitness first, so it's the ability of the heart and lungs to take in, transport and use oxygen. So if you think about it, if you think about someone who runs or swims a lot, their heart is likely to be bigger, the tubes going to the heart are better conditioned, the lungs can take in more oxygen, the tubes to the lungs are clearer, there are more red blood cells, and they're able to pump around the body, there's more mitochondria, and they're able to use more oxygen in the body and therefore produce a stronger force for longer. So that's a good definition of a cardiovascular fitness. If we look at strength and endurance together, so I'll do strength first. So strength refers to the ability of the muscles to exert a maximal force against a high resistance. So you can see here someone lifting a lot of weight. They'll probably only lift that weight once. So it's about trying to produce as much force as you can through your muscles and joints. Whereas a muscular endurance activity is the ability to work continuously under a low to moderate resistance. So this person will probably only do 1 or 2 reps, whereas this exercise can be performed for a long time. Flexibility is around the range of motion or a joint or a series of joints. So obviously if you've got good range through your joints here, you're able to get into good positions. Has quite a lot of good health effects actually. Body composition, having a good proportion of fat and muscle is definitely shown to be a healthy position. So in terms of those components of health related fitness, have a think before you move on about how each of them can influence your health. Your cardiovascular fitness, endurance, strength, flexibility, body composition. So remember, health is defined as not merely the absence of disease, optimal movement of the body, etc. So think about how all these things help you to live either longer or in a better way. We also talk about skill related fitnesses. So these are still fitnesses. Fitness is the ability to do something. So you find before the flexibility, the fitness was the ability to have a wide range of movement. So these are still fitnesses, but they're not necessarily going to help you to live longer or a better life, but they may well help you to be better at sports or other activities. So we tend to put them in a different category, skill related fitness. So skill related fitness is speed, power, reaction time, coordination, balance and agility. Go through those. So speed is the quickness of a movement in a short space of time. So think about obviously sprinting, but things like table tennis, where you generally move quickly. Power is a combination of strength and speed. So it's the ability to move a force at speed. All right, so something like shot putting takes a lot of power because you're moving the force and you're doing it quickly. High jumping, similar, you're taking your whole body and you're taking it off the ground in an explosive burst of movement in a short time frame. So strength and speed together is what gives you power. Reaction time is the ability to respond to a stimulus, and remember, a lot of this is learnt but you see what's going to happen ahead of time. Coordination is the ability to move two or more body parts smoothly, efficiently and under control. These are all just coordinating movements. Balance is the ability to control the body's centre of gravity. When you're stationary, see the centre of gravity is here, the person looks in balance, but also when they're moving. So if you're able to move and control your centre of gravity, it helps you play tennis, football, cycling, any of those things. Agility is changing the position of the body, moving different directions quickly. All right, so generally the speed is driven by power, but you need to be able to slow down, speed up, change direction regularly. So have a look at those list of things. Think of some activities and exercises might be able to include them. If you wanted to make someone quicker, how would you do it? If you wanted to make someone more agile, how would you do it? If you wanted to improve someone's balance, how would you do it? So it's worth having a think about that before we go on. So this is a very important concept. We're going to talk about the principles of training. If you understand these principles, you can make any real programs you like. You'll probably understand it. So I'm just going to go through them. So they all circulate around the principles of training. The first one is I'm going to go for is adaptability. And this one shows that your body's systems will adapt to what you do. They'll adapt in an individual way. If you stop training, they will reverse. The adaptations you make will be specifically what you do. Once you've done them, you'll have to keep making it harder, or reversing will happen, and you do need to recover for the activity to happen. So here's them in a different format. So specificity, that any change in adaptation of the body's muscles, organs and systems will be specific to the type of training. Think of some obvious ones here. If you do lots of long running, you get better at long running. If you do lots of heavy lifting, you get better at heavy lifting. If you do bicep curls but not deadlifts, you'll get better at bicep curls. In order to get an adaptation, you have to create overload, so the body will have to work a little bit harder than it's used to. And we're all familiar with this from training, what sometimes makes us ache a little bit. But the thing about the progressive overload is once you've adapted to that first stimulus, you then need to keep expanding it to make it harder. Otherwise, you do plateau. So you need to make sure you got overload, but the overload needs to get in higher. So you need to keep upping your weights, doing extra reps, running for longer, running faster. You're fairly familiar with this concept, I'm sure, but that's what it's called, progressive overload. You'll also be familiar with this if you've ever stopped training for a while. The exercise stimulus stops, was reduced, the benefits would gradually decline. So whatever type of training you do, you'll get less like that. So if you stop all exercise, you'll start getting generally unfitter. But if you change from doing strength stuff to endurance stuff, you'll find you'll get less strong, better endurance. Because the body will be reacting and adapting in accordance to the type of challenge which it's subjected. So the body will always change, it will always be training. Adaptations do occur though, not during the exercise, but once you're recovering from the exercise. So think about if you do 100 press-ups, at the end of the 100 press-ups, you'll be less able to do press-ups. But if you then have a rest and you come back 2 days later, the chances are you may be able to do more than 100 press-ups. Your fitness is improved during your rest period. So it's very important you get adequate rest and recovery to enable fitness changes to occur. Otherwise, you just get more and more less fit. So also bear in mind that we're all individuals. If any two people do the same training, they won't adapt in exactly the same way. So you should feel we all have our anatomical and personal preferences, which we'll adapt to in a different way. Have a think about this before you move on. So if you've got someone who wants to improve their sport, for example, someone who wants to get fitter and more healthy, how might you use your frequency, intensity, time and type principles to think about them? So how many times a week do they train? How hard should they train? What time should they train in? And then the type of training. So type of training particularly important in your skill related stuff. If you look at the factors that may affect your physical fitness: age, gender or sex, physique or body type, diet, fitness level, activity level, illness, drugs, that's medical or otherwise, stress, the amount of stress and your recovery from it, and the environment, for example the temperature, all can have an effect then generally on your physical fitness. So you will be a conglomerate of all these things. If we just focus on body types for a minute, there are three main body types we talk about, but there are people in the middle. So generally we talk about ectomorphs, mesomorphs and endomorphs. So ectomorphs tend to be not always tall, but generally lean. They tend to have a low body fat. They tend to have a relatively low amount of muscle tissue. They often find it difficult to gain either muscle or fat. So they may be a distance runner or similar, but it's just an ectomorphic body shape. If we go to the other end, we can look at an endomorph. So generally you might have a higher level of body fat and also higher levels of muscle. All right, so they should have both body fat and muscle. And then in the middle we've got a mesomorph. They may have fairly large amounts of muscle but low body fat, sprinters and gymnasts, etc. So you should now be able to explain and describe the components of physical fitness, recognise the physiological effects of exercise on components, describe and apply the principles of overload, reversibility, specificity to progress and regress each component of fitness, and also recognise factors affecting fitness.